I'm on a mission to introduce my husband to some real literature, so for today's book, we have a special treat. It is called Feral Omega. It's a dark reverse harem Omegaverse romance. That's the cover for you.
That was a lot to take in
Yeah, how
there.
much of that did you understand?
First off, caught on feral just being in the title here, like not messing around. I know dark. I know reverse harem just because of
That's
your
what
writing.
I write, yeah.
I have no idea what Omegaverse means.
That was my fear. I was hoping you'd have some like little knowledge of it, but it's okay. I'm gonna get really red. Omegaverse is it's a pretty niche genre of book. I think it started kind of as like fan fiction is where it originated, but it's essentially where people are born into one of three different three different types of people. You have the alphas, who are gonna be like the leaders of society.
Yeah.
You have the betas, which are gonna be like everyday people. Like most people usually in these books are betas, the general population. And then you have omegas, which are kind of like the damsel in distress.
Okay.
And in these books, usually the alphas and the betas will have they stick to their kind of tropes, but the omegas, you'll see a little variation. Sometimes they're treated as like a prize. They're like society's diamond, they're treasured. And then in other books, they're like the scum of society, like the low, the weak,
Got it. That's what I was going to ask. So is it a good thing or a bad thing?
It just depends on the book, yeah.
So that means this isn't specific to this author. This is a broad book genre.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's definitely not like a big genre, but there's, something for everybody type of thing. And so this book, Feral Omega, is one of the books where the omegas aren't treated very well.
Okay.
And it starts out, there's this woman, and she's a feral omega. So usually omegas are they're trained to serve their alphas, because usually the pairing in these books is between the alpha and the omega, because alphas are very dominant and unruly, and the omegas calm them.
Oh no.
But she's very unruly, and so she starts off, she's locked in a little basement by this organization that trains omegas before they go to their alphas. But she's unruly, so she hasn't been, she's they're trying to train her, and
what does unruly mean?
she just doesn't listen. I don't know.
Okay.
Then separate from her, there's this group of alphas, reverse harem. There's 5 of them, and they are a special ops team. So they work for the military, and they live in a little base in the wilderness, kind of by themselves. And they all like to wear masks. Some of the masks are pretty normal. Some of them I try really hard to ignore when I was reading this. One is a the old-fashioned doctor's masks, where it's kind of bird-like with the little beak.
Yeah.
One guy, he wears that. His name is Plague.
Okay.
I don't think that's his real name, but that's what they call him. Another guy, he was a government test. They were trying to make super alphas. And so he was raised in captivity. And in one of these tests, they made him drink acid, and it burned the lower half of his face and his throat out. And so he wears this mask that has a ventilator. And so you can hear him breathing. And that's how in the book, we'll get to this later, she knows he's near, is because she can hear his things like Darth Vader.
Like Bane, yeah, Darth Vader, yeah.
Yeah. Those are the 2 weird masks. Oh, another guy just wears a plain beige one with little eye holes. It looks like he's wearing another person's skin.
This is very weird. Do they wear these all the time?
Well, the Bane guy wears his all the time because he's hiding his face. He's no, he doesn't need it medically, but he's really embarrassed about his situation. And then the Plague doctor guy wears his all the time because he's got a contamination issue. He's got some OCD or something yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Anyways, so these 5 alphas are just crazy. They're just they're too violent. They're scary men of society, and that's why they have all been put in a group together and are like living out in the wilderness. But the government decides that they need an Omega to calm them down. But if they give these alphas a regular Omega, I mean, they'll just like run through her, like she can't handle it. So they give her a feral Omega. And that's how this book starts, right? This woman in the basement locked in chains, and they say, surprise, you got some alphas now. And they ship her off to these men.
So she can calm them down.
Yes. And so a few things you should know about Omegaverse is there is something called, it's very pheromone driven, these types of people, where the Omegas are really attracted to the alphas because they can sense their like masculine pheromones. And then the same thing with the alphas to the Omegas. And so she meets these guys, and she's pretty wary. She's like, I don't want you. But then she smells them, and she's like, whoa. Like, her pheromones are kind of telling her, like, these are your guys, you know? Like, they're hot. And then theirs are doing the same to her. And she goes in there, and she's really scared that, like, they're going to be really violent to her, and they're going to, like, beat her and, you know, do some unsavory things. And they're like, no, we don't really have a lot of interest in that. So it's the type of thing where they're, like, really violent to everybody else, but not her. But she's not trusting at all. Obviously, she's had a very hard life. And so she starts to very slowly kind of build a relationship with these 5 men. Very unique relationships because they're very unique men. Oh, one of the men, this is just kind of funny. All of the four of the 5 men are very jacked. Mm-hmm. One of them is described as being a little bit more of a dad bod. He doesn't have the rippling. You can still see his abs, but they're not quite as defined as the other men. And this book, every time they describe this 5th man, they call him like soft and like his extra layer, and like they're really fat shaming this poor man.
He's just a poor normal guy.
Yeah, he's just a normal guy, and they're really making fun of him, and I always feel bad about it. But anyways, she starts to build a relationship with these guys, and she's like planning to run away. And that's really pretty much the theme of this entire book, is her planning to run away, and then they win her over. And then she goes into something called a heat.
Like when an animal goes into heat?
Yeah. Which, in a lot of Omegaverse books, a heat is usually just a tool used for there to be spice to kind of hurry up the spice. But it's where the Omega, her body tells her that she needs an alpha intimately. And it's like an uncontrollable urge. Like, there's no ignoring it. And while she needs this alpha intimately, she needs something special called a knot. Knot.
Oh, okay.
And that is where...
This is part of her urge? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, and it's something only alphas have. But at the base of their tool, they have what is kind of like a deflated balloon. And it's like fine, normal during most of the time that they're banging. But at the end of the intimacy, mm-hmm. his finishing move is it inflates this balloon and gets locked inside of her. So if like this is her, and it normally, you know, this situation, and then it goes pa, and it pops, and they get trapped together for like 20 minutes or something.
What?
Mm-hmm. But Omegas are like made genetically to accept this, and it's like meant to be very pleasurable for her and for him.
Okay.
So then this happens, and this is like what kind of forces them to be together, because it's like it's a very emotional time for her. You know, she's in a very delicate, like very, what do you call it? Vulnerable position. Mm-hmm. And they really take care of her. And she's like, maybe they really do care about me. Maybe they're not as bad as I thought they were.
She's vulnerable in the sense of they're locked together.
Yeah, and they're just like, they could take advantage of her because her pheromones are like...
in heat, because this is...
Yeah,
but
heat. They don't. They're like, you know, they're very much like, what do you want, you know, type of thing. I read 2.5 of these books. They're pretty short, so I kind of zoomed through them.
It's just like, 2.5 of like a series by the author. Okay.
I will say, as I continued to read, the book shifted from being a little bit more of a romance to like an erotica, which is why I've stopped reading. It's just like not my personal preference.
Too much nodding.
Too much. There was a lot of nodding. Well, what happened is there was one scene where I think the word pulsing was used like 30 times, and I said, "I'm done." I couldn't do it. Would you read this book?
This was pretty uncomfortable just listening to. I think I will pass on the Omegaverse.
I've been really nervous to explain this to you, and I will say I have left some things out just to salvage our relationship. I think you would look at me differently. It's one thing to describe, I don't know, like tentacles and, blue ice
Is there more
men too.
package updates?
I think those are all the big package updates. There's just a lot of like small like habits, I would say, in these books.
Well, now you told me that there's something you haven't told me, and I feel like
You'll have to
hear
you'll have to read it for yourself and figure out. How about
That's
that?
all I'll get out of you.
I'm leaving something open for you.